What's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where we process blue for you. I'm Alex Zietlow. He's Mike Kaye. We cover the Carolina Panthers for the Charlotte Observer, and we're just sort of winging it right now. We're fresh off the field of the first OTA session of this Carolina Panthers offseason. Bryce Young cussed a little bit. Jonathon Brooks made a whole bunch of splash plays. There's a whole bunch of places we can take this first off, but Mike, I know where I want to start. I just want the record to show this. I know where I want to start, but Mike, where do you want to start today?
We got rained on pretty hard today, and then the sun came. I feel like we got like every treatment of the Carolina summer experience today, which, with a bunch of new rookies and a bunch of new free agents. Welcome to Charlotte.
Yeah.
But what I thought was kind of interesting was the way that everything kind of set up. So they start doing special teams drills, torrential downpour. Punter Sam Martin, like, literally just started punting, and Earth tests its mightiest heroes. And then the sun comes out, and it is like, I already ruined one notebook. I was going to do the notebook bit, and then it was just like, then I'm never going to use that notebook again. But then, like, the sun came out and the heat, and then Bryce Buck brought the fire, as you said. And let's get into that a little bit, because I think, not to discuss Stone's fourth scythe more than we need to, but I do think we're making a mountain out of a pebble here,
Yeah. Okay.
so to speak. But talk to me about what you want to talk about, because you were like right there when it happened.
Yeah. So, okay, I guess we're gonna get into the Bryce Young thing now. For those who weren't there, and for those who weren't scouring Twitter at the time that this happened, I'm sure you've already.
Shame on you.
I'm sure you've probably already heard what went down, but basically, this was about, I want to say, like 30 minutes into practice. The four quarterbacks were going through just pitches and catches with the receiver group. They were kind of working through the route tree, whatever. And it had just rained, as Mike mentioned. And Bryce was unhappy as he jogged down to the field closest to where the media was standing. And he said, quote, "It's not raining anymore. Clean this blank up. It's not blank raining. We need better execution." And somehow that got recorded, put on the internet, and it kind of went viral from there. And yes, like it got so viral that like the NFL Twitter account tweeted it out, which I don't exactly know how that happens. There were like two pretty audible cuss words in there, but we're not here to litigate that. So that all happens. And Mike, I'm sure this is where you're going to have some pushback, but yes, it's in the heat of the moment of a messy beginning to practice. A leader is just stepping up and trying to communicate to his guys, "Hey guys, let's step up. Let's do this. Let's lock in." The thing that's interesting about this, though, I think, is it is Bryce Young, a mild-mannered quarterback. It is Bryce Young in year 4, first time without Andy Dalton. 3 quarterbacks who haven't been in a Dave Canales system, and Bryce is the guy leading that. A pretty young receiver core. Even Teteroa McMillan wasn't in uniform today. We'll get into more detail why later, but he wasn't in uniform today. This was an interesting moment in the Bryce Young story, I think. It's not a massive moment because we've heard him be a leader in this sort of way behind closed doors, but he did it in front of us. He did it in a way in which the public heard him. And I there is something there that is compelling. I'm not saying that this is a whole new leader in Bryce Young in year 4, but I don't know, man. It came at an interesting time, so early, in fact, that we're all just like, "Yo, wait, Bryce, like, you rarely have to tell Bryce to chill." And I think some people in the media were kind of looking at each other like, "Oh my gosh, did he just say that? Do we believe our ears?" That's my side in which it was compelling. We've had discussions of this off air. you tend to like look at it a bit differently, and I'd love to hear your perspective.
Well, I think it should be expected, for one. For all the reasons you mentioned, it's his 4th year. He's the alpha in the room now. He's taking control of this offense. He knows this is a big year for not only him but the team. I think it's just a maturation of him, like a normal, there's a trend we've seen. He got a little bit more personable with the media and in front of cameras last year. It's just the next iteration of him. And so to me, I think being like, oh gosh, gee golly, Bryce, it's like taking away the agency of him being an adult. I think we have to look at him as being a veteran, not a veteran quarterback, but an adult quarterback who is growing into a leadership role. And you can have that view and estimation without being a pro Bryce guy or an anti Bryce guy. He is entering his mid 20s. He's been in this offense for 3 years. He's been in the league now. This is going to be his 4th summer in the league. Cool. Okay. I mean, like, just think about it. If Matt Stafford or Aaron Rodgers or even Jalen Hurts said this, are we making a big deal out of it? I don't think so. Blake Bortles, the first quarterback I covered in the league, would tell you that he effing sucked or stunk after games. But because it's Bryce, because Bryce is so buttoned up, you catch him in a moment where he is trying to be a leader, and isn't that what you want?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is only a positive to me. I mean, there are people that are going to say like you shouldn't curse or whatever, they have their views, but to me, this is just like a
It's
natural
football.
step.
It's football. It's a gladiator sport.
Yeah, to me, it's like, cool, that's football. Like, I've heard Dave say similar stuff. I've heard, offensive linemen talk for the last several, decade and a half. So I don't know, maybe I'm not as sensitive to it. I just think if you're going to look at it as a positive, it's because he's trying to take charge of the team, which I think is terrific. There's no real negative in it, but I also think it's not something that's going to win people over if they're not Bryce guys or Bryce gals, so to speak. I think all that matters is what he does from an efficiency standpoint, an accuracy standpoint. And by the way, not to get lost in the sauce of all of this, he did have a pretty strong OTA workout, I thought. Made several completions to David Moore. He looked like a guy who knows the offense extremely well. And he has played this defense several times. And so I think that's important. While you might say, well, if he knows the defense and he knows the offense, well, duh, this is going to look better. But I think in order for him to get to that next level, he has to find a spot where he is in a groove. And I think this was a good start.
I just think it's an interesting way to talk about Bryce Young's evolution as a leader. And it's also an interesting way to talk about this quarterback room as a whole. After practice, I kind of built off the questioning about Bryce Young and his evolution as a veteran, blah, blah, blah. And Dave Canales took the opportunity to talk about the rest of the quarterback room and how they are working to improve Bryce and to cover Bryce and to just elevate every element around him. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Mike, because Dave was really complimentary of Kenny Pickett, very complimentary of Will Grier. They actually worked together in Philly previously. And I thought it was interesting how he kind of viewed the quarterback room as just important foundations to hold up starting quarterback Bryce Young. And then he also mentioned Haynes King, who's a rookie and who's learning and has all these interesting tools. But he really focused on Kenny Pickett and Will Grier. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, backup quarterback is a servant role. We've talked about it a few times this offseason. You are serving the starter so that he can be best prepared. And then when that player is out of the lineup, you are serving instead of him. And I think Kenny is a guy that has been a starter. He's been a backup. He's won a championship on a team where he was a backup. He knows what a winning organization looks like. He's been in several offenses. I think he makes sense as a guy, at least from a scouting board standpoint. I didn't think he looked particularly impressive today in OTAs, but it's one OTA workout, and we're not going to hype up either way in a practice. But yeah, I mean, Will Greer's a guy. He's a coach's son who is from here. He probably grew up, watching the Panthers, was a third round pick of theirs way back when, wants to make good on that, wants to stay in the league. I would hope that he would be great at servicing the quarterback. So,
Yeah.
I mean, none of that really surprised me.
You mentioned that we're not going to make too much either way, the good or the negative, from today. You might think that I did that earlier today when I kind of tweeted out that Jonathon Brooks looks really good. Yes, it is a non-contact workout. Yes, like running backs are always going to run through the plays. You can't really tell based on our angle where we're standing during these workouts how the line moves, like if the offensive line wins the line of scrimmage or the defensive line wins it. So it's kind of hard to judge certain things. But what I saw from Jonathon Brooks was someone who was explosive, kind of fast. You said that you noticed like him having a bit more bulk this year. Like he looked a bit stronger. These are positive signs for someone who has endured a lot through his first 2 years in the NFL. And just seeing him out on the grass brought Dave Canales a lot of joy, brought Robert Hunt a lot of joy, and probably the rest of the team. Curious to get your thoughts on Jonathon Brooks's, I want to say debut, but it wasn't his debut, but like debut this year, I guess.
I thought he looked good. I don't think he was running full speed. I don't want to say there was like a hitch, but it did seem like he was trying to mine the grass because it was wet out there. It seemed like that was evident. I don't know that for a fact, but it did seem like he was kind of not trying to go full tilt after a rainstorm with that practice field. But I thought he showed really good balance as he was bobbing and weaving through defenders. Obviously, they're just kind of moving targets. They're not trying to hit him or anything like that. And we need to see how he does throughout OTAs. But I think his whole mindset has to be surviving one day at a time. And he survived day one of OTAs and looked the part. And look, they want him to be a very big part of this offense. I don't care how many times they tell you, well, we're optimistic and, hopefully he can contribute. No, they want him to be a cog in this machine. And I think the only way that happens is if they keep him healthy. And so far, so good.
Where do you want to go next? Jaelan Phillips?
Yeah, let's talk about Jaelan Phillips because I asked Robert Hunt about what he brings to the team, what he brings to the workout. And then it became story time with Rob Hunt. And Hunt basically told all of his teammates while he was giving a speech, this is walkthrough. And Jaelan Phillips essentially said, well, yeah, it's walkthrough. Kind of, a similar sense of humor to Mike Kaye, some would say, and just acknowledging the silliness of that because you're competitors. And then Rob was like, yeah, he's the one guy if we're going to up the tempo here. And what happened in this OTA? I think I'm not hyping this up, but this was a competitive OTA practice. This wasn't just like, hey, stand there and throw things, or hey, this is placement right here. It wasn't just like an install. Guys were getting uppity. The sideline was getting noticeably into it. There was a flag thrown on a go ball from Bryce to Chris Brazzell down the left sideline. Corey Thornton at the last minute tugged away as the ball was coming down, got called for a PI, and the defensive sideline kind of erupted and was just kind of like, what? Tyreek Funderburk, who I wrote about earlier in the week, who's from Indian Trail, North Carolina, got a pass breakup to end the session. And the defense kind of smothered him and was excited with him. So like there was a bit of swag in this practice. I thought there was some intensity. There was nothing like out of the norm. Like even Dave Canales said pass rushers were avoiding the quarterback at all costs. Because we remember last year, Princely Umad-Milan got by Ike Kwanu, because he's that nice. And there was a bit of a a brouhaha sort of situation there. But I think it's interesting because Dave Canales is walking around practice, and he said that when he was going from drill to drill, he noticed like kind of an uptick in intensity. Um, I thought so far so good. It was a good first start. I mean, it's OTAs. Like I know we want to hone in on what's interesting and what isn't, but felt like a good OTA practice. It felt like good energy. It felt like people knew how important each workout was. And they are going to start the preseason sooner than everybody else. So they better get themselves in gear.
I just think it's interesting that the energy felt kind of like a training camp practice when all of a sudden you bring in someone like Jaelan Phillips, like as you said, Robert Hunt said, if anyone's going to up the tempo in a walkthrough, it's going to be him. And then you also bring on a guy like Devin Lloyd, who was notorious for going quote unquote too hard in practice, at least according to guys who've played with him previously. Like that spells good things. Like I don't mean to get ahead of ourselves here, but that does seem good for this Carolina Panthers team, for this Carolina Panthers coach who has just been, begging for the team to kind of embody his "this is a party, this is all energy" lifestyle or coaching style that he kind of brings to the field every day. I think that's cool. I think that's cool. Devin Lloyd, probably should talk about Devin Lloyd and his kind of perspective on Trevin Wallace and that whole thing. Trevin Wallace was wearing a red no contact jersey today. He did, however, participate in drills. It was kind of just an extra precaution. So when offensive linemen got into the second level during 11 on 11, they knew not to hit Trevin essentially. And that was because of a procedure that Trevin had earlier this offseason. But according to Dave Canales, he is recovering, quote, great. Where do you want to start with Trevin, with the whole Trevin Wallace and Devin Lloyd of it all? Was there anything that really caught your eye today?
I mean, I think it's good that he was out there and he was signal calling as well, which could be his role this year. He was very, very vocal. That's something that he's really improved on the last couple of years. I think allowing Devin Lloyd to just play at attack is great. That the safety group also communicates really, really well. Nick Scott knows pretty much everything about this defense. Trayvon Merrick is a guy who can play dime linebacker. So there's like a good mix there. This is a really important offseason for Trevin Wallace, coming off shoulder surgery, trying to hold on to the starting lineup. They have thoroughly upgraded over him as far as the number one linebacker job in Devin Lloyd. And I thought Devin Lloyd was very polite, but also pretty thoughtful in his answer when I asked him about what he's learned from Trevin Wallace. He said he's a really smart dude, knows the defense, all that sort of stuff. If Trevin has somebody who can be just like a very dynamic linebacker next to him, I think it sets him up to succeed where he doesn't have to be that guy. Maybe he is the guy who sets everybody up and that he knows the defense and is in the right spot at the right time, and he doesn't have to second guess or underestimate or overestimate his teammates. So look, I think that was a step in the right direction. Yeah, is it a bummer that he's in a red jersey? Sure, but he's out there and he's participating and he's part of it, and it's limited contact right now anyway. So I thought that was fine. What did you take away kind of from him being out there, especially when you have guys like, Tetairoa McMillan dealing with a foot injury, Bobby Brown dealing with a calf injury, and they're kind of temporarily sidelined?
Yeah, I was about to actually go into that. I thought it was pretty promising, the Panthers' health at this point in the year. I know that they are just now getting onto the field, but every single offseason that I've covered, some sort of issue has cropped up. I guess Turf Wharton cropped up this year, so that's a rebuttal to what I was about to say. But, every year, JC Horn is out with some sort of foot thing, or last year it was somebody else. Like there was always something. And we saw Jatavian Sanders moving really well and laterally after a season-ending ankle injury the previous year. There were just examples like that all across the field. And this team is kind of taking their time when it comes to, we're not rushing Tetero McMillan back. There's no reason to put Bobby Brown, who has a minor injury, out there because, they're going to need some nose tackles this year. So that's kind of where I go with the whole health status of the team. Yeah, man. I mean, there's only so much we can talk about after an OTA session, particularly the first one. Is there anything else that you think that we should touch on prior to getting out of here?
Yeah, I think the rookie class has kind of impressed some of the veterans. I spoke to Cam Jackson
Nice.
today, and I asked him, is there like a rookie or somebody younger that is, or around, your experience that stood out? He goes, Aaron Hall. I didn't realize how twitchy he was. And, obviously Aaron Hall gets the Processing Blue glow up as a friend of the program.
Friend of the podcast.
I thought that was interesting. I asked Devin Lloyd about Jackson Kuwatch. He brought up how curious he is, which I think is a really important thing, not only in football, but just like in life in general, when you're trying to improve yourself. We always talk about a good journalist is curious. Well, good football players curious too. Why is this happening? Why am I running this concept? Why am I doing this? How am I doing that? Why is this technique? What have you? And Jackson Kuwatch seems, he says that he's a film junkie, so he's a student of the game. I mean, I don't know that I'm surprised by that. I think that's pretty cool. I also think Lee Hunter is getting a lot of love from Canales. Mm-hmm. Canales did mention that Monroe Freeling is getting some first team reps, but for right now, Rasheed Walker has been the primary guy at left tackle. We should acknowledge that. Luke Fortner was the setter today. So it's very early. Typically, you allow veterans to get peak position, and then you kind of have them go at it. Look, I think, again, there's not a lot of negatives to take away from today. And maybe that's not exciting podcasting, but I think it was a positive day for them outside of maybe us all getting colds from the rain.
Yeah. One final thing before we go. Is the Corey Thornton versus Chris Braslov matchup something that we should expect in training camp and the rest of the offseason? Is that going to be the premier matchup that we're going to be looking at?
I want to see Mike Jackson against everyone. That's the premier matchup. Mike Jackson in practice versus literally any of the wide receivers is the matchup to watch. He's a guy who wants to be paid. He's in the final year of his contract. He turns 30 this year. It's a big year for him. He's also really fun to watch in practice. He's one of the more competitive, aggressive practice players. That's what we need to watch. And honestly, I think part of the reason why Tetero McMillan was so successful last year is because he went up against JC Horn and Mike Jackson every day. And those guys can bully you. They can use their size really well. And they can get after it. And they both have speed too. So, it's an interesting group. And I think the wide receiver cornerback stuff in general is going to be fun.
Catch Mike on with his notebook that he wrote at the end of today on Tuesday. Catch that on Wednesday morning, because that's when you're listening to this podcast. I wrote about Bryce Young this morning. We're going to have availabilities with the coordinators on Wednesday, and Mike's going to be all over that, as you know. Mike, am I forgetting anything?
Access Panthers, baby. Access Panthers is what we got to do. It's free. Comes to your email inbox every Monday. Gets you ready for the week ahead. Features a lot of good stuff that you won't get anywhere else. And Alex and I tag team it. So like we switch it back and forth. So you get a little bit of both of our styles in there.
Yeah, heck yeah. And with that, here we go. Thanks, as always, to listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike Kaye and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to charlotteobserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
That's a wrap, Zach.